Welcome to Fortune Friday. My name is Connie Vanderzand, and I am a cash flow and business mentor. And today we are speaking with Marcia Baczynski, or just Marcia B. She is an internationally recognized speaker, writer, coach, and expert on sexual communications, relationships, and women's empowerment. And she is the co-founder of Cuddle Party, creator of the Good Girl Recovery Program, and a workshop leader who has worked with tens of thousands of people to speak up for their needs, boundaries, and deepest desires. And I feel that the program that she leads is super important when we are exploring how money shows up in our world. And the three takeaways I had from our conversation is, one is that you and your business are separate identities. That is something she talks about, and which I firmly believe in. How dreams change and how money supports that. And my favorite topic is your inner good girl and where it stops you. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. And here's Marcia.
Welcome to Fortune Friday. My name is Connie Vanderzand, and I'm going to be interviewing Marcia Baczynski.
You got it.
Baczynski. With the Asking for What You Want program. I actually have done Marcia's Good Girl program, and I use a lot of her teachings in even my group program right now, because I find them so powerful as part of the money conversation that we have. And so I thought it would be fun today to connect with Marcia to see kind of what her money journey was, and to talk about her program, and to show what these stories we learned as kids actually have to do with how we interact in our relationship with money, let alone relationship with anybody else in the world. So thank you, Marcia, for being here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do,
So I'm a relationship coach. I teach a lot around sexual communication and a lot around women's empowerment. So my website's askingforwhatyouwant.com, and that kind of is the name of the game for me. I'm really about helping people figure out what it is they want and how to talk about it in their personal relationships, in their intimate relationships, in their friendships, in their families. Connie mentioned the Good Girl Recovery Program, which is one of my group coaching programs that I offer a couple times a year, which is about sort of looking at some of the things I discovered when coaching people in relationships and coaching people around, sexual communication and relationship communication. There's these certain patterns that people developed, that the women and girls seem to develop, that are socialized by the larger society and often by familial expectations. So it's very on topic for some of what we're going to be talking about today with money, which is not my area of expertise or forte. So I'm very excited to be having this conversation with you.
Awesome. So I would say that money is not your special talent.
No, money's not money is a thing that I have had to figure out as I go.
Okay. All right.
And I've spent a lot of time untangling some of the early lessons I got and mixed messages, and so let's get into it.
All right. Well, we can start with that. So what do you think the earliest memory that you have of how money came into your life?
Honestly, I don't have any really clear memories. I remember playing Monopoly as a kid. I remember getting an allowance. We got a quarter every week for doing our chores. I remember, and I used to spend it on Hubba Bubba bubble gum. That was the thing, because it cost a quarter for a little 5-pack. But then you had to find a penny to pay the tax. And then
sucks.
that was in Georgia. And then what else do I remember? I remember my dad writing checks for the collection basket at church. Mm-hmm. Those are some of my earliest memories. And my parents did give us an allowance and tried to teach us a little bit about money management. And I would say succeeded on some levels and wildly failed on others. They succeeded on a lot of the details, and then there were unspoken things I picked up that I didn't quite. It took me a lot longer to figure out.
Yeah. No, but that's good. I'm always really impressed. I mean, my own family, my sister-in-laws and brother-in-laws did great jobs with their kids about teaching them how to save, and spend. I mean, for me, it was all about spend. It wasn't a big encouragement to save anything. So, which plays into my own style now. So how did your parents teach you about that? Did they like encourage you to have a savings account or?
Yeah, we had a savings account. I don't remember my parents ever fighting about money, ever.
Oh, okay.
They had a pretty similar lifestyle. They were very frugal. Both of my parents grew up fairly poor, like working class, had the basics covered, not a lot of extras, not a lot of frills growing up, especially my mom's side of the family, because there were 7 kids and they were coming out of the Depression. But so my parents were very frugal and conservative with money. But like we had frills. We had, we went on family trips every year to see the grandparents. We went to Hawaii when I was 12. Nothing wildly luxurious, and definitely, solidly middle class kind of upbringing, which was different from their own upbringing. Okay. So there was that. And then I also remember like we had the stock market game, which is like gotta be like we had Monopoly in the stock market game, right?
Oh.
And my brother loved Monopoly. I hated it. But we learned about the stock market, and I remember also learning about it in school. And back then we didn't have the internet, so you had to like look up the stock prices every day in the newspaper. They used to print them all, close of business the night before. And so I learned about stocks, I learned about investing, but I never learned how to make money as an entrepreneur. So there was a big gap for me because both of my parents had very steady old school jobs where you get the job and you keep it for 25 years. And that was not the economy I graduated into. Right. I don't know anybody who's, I think I have one friend who's had a job for more than 10 years. But yeah, and there was no entrepreneurship in my family. So there was a big learning curve for me in my 20s when I sort of involuntarily became self-employed after 9/11. Where I was like, I hate having a job and none of this is what I want to do. What do I actually want to do? And then I just like figured it out basically. But there was not, that was like a big gap in it where I was like, I learned how to save based on a steady paycheck. Right. And so all of the lessons I had it took me years to figure out how to save with a variable income, even though I knew I should be. And I understood how investments work. It took me years to figure out how to do my taxes right. So there were a lot of gaps on that kind of thing. In part because I started working on my own so young and had no knowledge in my family of origin about how to do that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that entrepreneurship is something that gets taught or mentored in schools earlier on. Mm-hmm. Would you say that was because every business has a roadblock, every business falls down, scrapes their knees. It's just we don't normally talk about it very often. Yeah. Would you say that was it, that learning that?
Oh yeah, big time. And that and like not having a clear distinction between me and my business. So like It wasn't my business fell down, it was I was failing, right? That's the good girl, right? Like I am not doing it perfectly, therefore I personally am a failure, not I have a business that is a separate entity for me. It took me a while to figure out, like, I am a person not defined by my business. My business is an endeavor that I'm trying to do, and among many life endeavors, not the only one, but it definitely was a challenge for me to figure all that stuff out. And I think mostly at this point I've got it, but it's, I've been in business for 17 years, so I would hope so.
Yeah. Well, and that's a common thing, is that the realization that there is a business entity, it has its own life force, its own destiny, its own thing. And eventually we want an entity that can maybe survive us or, be sold or something like that. But a lot of people don't understand the two. And then they treat the business, I think, more like an ATM, like a bank. Yeah. Than like pausing and letting it provide to their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Did you do a cash handling system?
No.
You just came up with one that worked?
Yeah, I just started doing spreadsheets, and my basic practice is I check my accounts every morning to see what's going on. So that was the thing I figured out. And I have a very simple, it's getting more complicated lately, but for most of the last several years, it's been a pretty simple system where like money comes in, I put it in a spreadsheet and figure out how to allocate and then pay myself out of that. And I definitely feel like still a little like the kid in class who like didn't do their homework and everybody else knows what's going on. Like I kind of feel that way perpetually about money. And at the end of the day, like things get handled. I know what's going on. Probably there's optimization and efficiency I could be building in, and that's something I'm constantly looking at. Well, I don't know about constantly, ongoingly looking at. I will set it aside for a couple months at a time. But I do think that, I just sort of came up with the system sort of ad hoc over the years, and it has worked, and my accountant can figure things out when they need to. And but as my business is growing, there's some, we've been adding online courses, and there's like some additional revenue streams coming in. The train is coming. I hear it. Hang on. As the complexity of my business grows, I can see that going forward, I'm probably going to get some outside help and get some additional bookkeeping support to help me kind of with the week-to-week stuff around my money. But the single best practice I have developed, like the best habit I have, is I check my accounts every morning and I just look to see what's going on.
So you're paying attention to it, because often, like in our first years of business, we ignored it.
Definitely did that for a long time, and hoped.
Hoping and dream that it will land on the doorstep. And so you're paying attention to it, and as I tell people all the time, I personally like an accounting tool. You don't have to use an accounting tool. A spreadsheet works just as well, and there will be a point in your business where you're going to want to leverage your time. You're going to need somebody more detail oriented because you're going to do more things or something, and that's when you can outsource to a bookkeeper to come in and maybe put it in a tool. But spreadsheets perfectly are fine.
Yep. I had thought that 2020 was going to be the year, but things have stayed simple, sort of against my will. So we'll do it for the way I've been doing it for another year probably, and then we'll see what happens in 2021.
Well, so 2020 kind of created this little interesting world we have. What is your Bigkahuna dream for your business?
That's an interesting question. So for years, my business, I was actually having a conversation with a friend about this the other day. For years, my business, my North Star in my business was make enough money to sustain my life comfortably and happily, while keeping enough time flexibility that I could spend time with my parents, because my mother was chronically ill. And last year, she was hospitalized. She was in the hospital for 4 months, and then she passed. And so that had been kind of a major orientation for my whole business, was actually not super money focused, but very time focused, and like managing my time in such a way that I could continue to keep my business going. And I, in fact, did. Like I spent probably 2.5 months in Georgia last year, and I was able to keep my whole business going because I had set so many things up to be online, which means 2020 coming along has also been like, I already have these tools. My business has always been a hybrid online, offline business. So I just moved everything online. It was pretty easy. So it's interesting, the Bigkahuna Dream, because like I'm kind of in the process of reformulating that. Like for the longest time, a Bigkahuna Dream was to spend as much time with my parents as possible. And my dad's still around, and we're figuring out what travel might look like, but it's not the same, like, because he just doesn't have the same intense needs as and we just didn't know what my mom's healthcare was gonna look like. So now it's sort of like I'm getting really obsessed with camping, and I'm like talking with my partner about building out the minivan for like long-term camping adventures, and possibly a cross-country trip next year at some point, depending on how open things are. And that's a sort of medium-term goal. And I'm kind of in the process of rethinking what my Bigkahuna dreams are. I'm not a very stuff-oriented person. I'm a very experience-oriented person, and I'm a very relationally oriented person. So if I can go have experiences with people I like, and they don't even have to be like super exotic, like literally camping in California is really fun for me. That's important to me. I think the other thing is I'm sort of looking at what the world is right now, and I really want to be able to be generous. That's the thing that's really important to me. So
So some type of legacy or
legacy, consistency and donation. I'm not sure. It's like it's kind of taking shape. There are definitely some organizations I feel very strongly about the work that they're doing in the world. And I'm kind of in the process of trying to figure out what that could look like. So that's sort of on the table. I mean, my mom passed less than a year ago, and then this all happened. So it's been kind of a whirlwind. But I've been doing a lot of journaling to sort of see like what are the consistent themes, and digging through. This is also a practice I do a lot, is digging through my old journals to see what were the old dreams that I set aside for a while. Oh. Some of them are irrelevant, and some of them, it turns out, like I was journaling about how I wanted to spend a lot of my time camping with my friends, like literally in college as I was moving to New York City. Like that what? So, sometimes we set aside dreams for a while and then going back and rediscovering like what were those like earlier life passions that, you intentionally maybe backburnered or maybe you just forgot about them. But bringing those back to the forefront. So I'm in a kind of a process around that at the moment.
Okay.
How to be generous, how to have experiences, how to keep my chosen family and community connected and vibrant and all that.
Well, selfishly, I'd like you to have an outdoor camping experience for good girls to work through their
I was hoping to have a retreat this year, but 2021 dreams. I have a campground already picked out. There's a really fabulous retreat center in Santa Cruz that I've been wanting to rent for that purpose. So
nice. All right. Well, we'll keep watching for that.
Keep talking about it. We'll keep an eye out for it. We'll see how we can make this unfold.
Yeah. So that's cool. So let's talk about. Did you go through your good girl process? Because you have this program that I really love, that there's a lot of things about it that I think are really super important for a relationship with money. Was that crafted because of what you went through that you found out? I mean,
it was a combination of a few things. Some pieces are pieces that I've gone through. I grew up in the South, it was a very conservative Catholic family, but that didn't take neither the conservatism nor the Catholicism. Some of it is actually a reaction to what I was seeing in my clients over the years as I was doing relationship coaching for people in non-traditional relationships. They were interested in kink. They were interested in polyamory, open relationships. They were interested in same-sex relationships. And I was just seeing all this stuff of like, and I would hear the phrase like, but I'm just such a good girl. Like that phrase was a phrase my clients were saying to me. And then the third factor was actually my mother. I feel like she undid a lot of her, let me say this, she did not impose her training as a good girl on me.
Wow.
Intentionally, I think. We had some good conversations at the end of her life while she was in the hospital about some of these things. She really did not want me to take on that stuff, but she never really got to reap the benefits for herself. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get emotional talking about it. She could see it enough to not impose it on me, but she couldn't see it well enough to be able to like internalize it herself.
Wow.
And that makes me sad, but also feels like such a gift that I got. So I was raised with these kind of not exactly conflicting, but these ideologies of I could do whatever I wanted. I could be whoever I wanted. I wasn't going to be punished if I brought home information about something I was up to that my mom wasn't thrilled about. Like we would have a conversation about it, but she was much more interested in keeping a connection with me than me adhering to some rigid moral code. And yet that was still the rigid moral code that she herself was living by.
Yeah.
So when I started to see a lot of the same patterns show up with my clients that I grew up around, I was like, there's something here. And I literally just put it out there. I was like, I put it on Facebook years ago. This was probably like 7 years ago with no context. I just said, what does your inner good girl sound like? You can private message me if you want. I literally got 100 responses. People knew exactly what I meant and could articulate it. I was like, oh, we're on to something here.
Yeah. And it's remarkable. I think I did your program right when I started doing some mindset work. And then it followed after all of that, Barbara Hewson now work about how our good girl, like the husband brings home the
Right.
the money, and the woman, does this, and we don't have a lot of control over it, and it's really not our money. And that opened up for me this whole other big worm of like, here I was in this marriage, and it wasn't my money.
Right.
I didn't have any say over it. But so that's why I think your work is so important to that piece of it, because we can have these things. Your mom, amazing woman. I did not know that story behind Good Girl, like how she influenced it. How we can be aware of it, like your mom was, and shift it, because even if we choose not to have kids, like I've chosen not to have kids, I still have an influence of the younger generation.
Yeah, exactly.
How we can do that. So,
and talking about it too, like I'm in my early 40s. My mom was born in the late 40s, and most of her adult life she couldn't even get a credit card without not her adult life, but her formative life. She couldn't get a credit card without a man's signature. There's so many pieces. I think and I talk about this, as you know, in the Good Girl Recovery Program, that these things are not like personal failings. This is us being a generation or two past the generation that finally got access to some of this financial access, being able to get a loan without a man's signature, being able to function in the world autonomously, own property even. These are not things that women have always been able to do. We have to learn how to do it. And when you combine that with the good girl and this sort of like, oh, if I just follow the rules, some man will take care of me, that is not an old paradigm. That's like within living memory. And there's a lot of other stuff I will reel it in. I was about to go to my soapbox, but yeah, there's a lot of pieces to this that are, it's really easy to think like, oh, I'm bad with money, or I shouldn't have let him do whatever, or I should let him do whatever. And it's like, that is not stuff we were born with. This is stuff we learned from our culture. And a lot of it is like, we're in this intergenerational flux period where there's old scripts and new scripts kind of colliding up against each other.
Yeah.
Messily.
Messily. Yeah. And the social justice work I've been doing in the last few months is like, this is stuff deeper. I mean, I've always told people that how we interact with money is in our DNA, and we go back 7 generations.
Yeah.
But I've always only looked within our family lineage. Mm-hmm. It's also our society.
Yes, exactly.
And we unfortunately were blinded by a lot of what was going on in our society, depending on where we were raised, but to realize everything that was going on in the U.S. had an impact on how we interact with money and how male dominated it was. Mm-hmm. A white male dominated society it was. And now we have an opportunity right now to be more awake and to see what that is and how to shift that. So I think that's why your Good Girl program is so needed right now.
And so much of like government policy around money and taxes and everything is set up around the hypothetical family of 4.
Yes.
And it was a man and a woman until, we got gay marriage, but it's still supposed to be same sex, 2 adults and 2 children. And it's like, well, that nuclear family model was only the dominant model in the United States for 15 years. 15 years.
Wow.
1950 to 1965. That was the only time in human history that was the dominant model. Most of human history, we've lived in either extended family model, village model, tribal model, right? So like 15 years, we have entire government policies that influence who we're supposed to be as women, how we're supposed to handle money as a family, as an individual, like all of those things based on an exceedingly rare model of family and it has huge implications for how we think about money, how we think about our role in the world, how, watching how women are struggling with work and children during this pandemic. Oh, yeah. And like, it's really falling on women to do a lot of the childcare and yeah, I could go on and on about that, but it's like this expectation that we're supposed to be good and what is the standard of good and who does that benefit? Mm-hmm. And it benefits a power structure that a lot of us, if we'd known better, we wouldn't have signed on for it. And a lot of us are starting to see that in a big way.
Yeah. Yeah, and so for the work not only is internally is for us to be aware of and making a different choice for us each individually, but it is to look at how we can change some of these institutional
absolutely
things, like taxes and government in general and police and jails and all these things. And, it seems like it's such a big thing to change.
It is, and when you really start to see how interconnected it is, it's like, oh, we can all push on our own little levers at the same time, because these things are all set, like, to get really theoretical for a minute, you know, there's this talk like women or Black people or, you know, disabled people or whoever, whatever intersectionality that you're find yourself in, are like a special block. But that dominant power structure is an identity group. It's an unspoken identity group, and it is actively acting in unity, in solidarity with one another, to create a power structure that benefits them. And so there's this moment that's kind of happening. This is kind of a little far field of what we were talking about, but I do think it's relevant of like, wait a second, white feminism isn't getting us anywhere because it's ignoring all these other issues that need to be talked about. Let's look at this with more of an intersectional lens. We can't invite people to the table without like actually acknowledging that it's our table. So maybe what if we go sit at other people's tables for a while? Like there's all these sort of, I think, awakenings people are having around social justice where it's like, wait a second, we could act as a group too. We could, like, and it's not to say there aren't, you know, competing power struggles. There are, but that's true with the dominant structure as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They figured out how to work together with their differences. We can do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to wrap it all the way back to money, for us to make these changes, it's going to require profitable businesses. It's going to require that we're living our best lives and that we are using money in our businesses to help support these causes and the things that we really want to see change, whether that's through scholarships or we're donating back, or we're creating maybe in your future, there will be a foundation.
Yep.
In your mom's name.
In my mom's name. Aww.
To end all good girls for.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, I appreciate this time. Let's end with an inspiration. So we've talked about this. What gratitude about how your business contributes to your life, or what would you like as an added benefit does it provide that without this business?
Oh, certainly the amount of travel I've been able to do and the amount of really cool and interesting people I've been able to meet. I feel very lucky that in the before times, I would get to travel to conferences. I would get to meet all these really interesting people. I would be brought in to teach at different events and retreats and trainings. And I just got to meet some of the coolest, most amazing people. I feel like I'm part of a network that stretches, you know, there's my business network, but then there's also like my colleagues who do consent education and sex education and who are like doing work around feminism and just change activism and changing the world. And it feels really nourishing to be able to be a part of this sort of, like, feel myself as part of a network of people who are really pushing for a different and bigger and brighter and better world.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
Yeah, I really feel lucky for that.
Well, awesome. Well, how can viewers follow up with you, learn more about what you do? What do you think?
Yeah, so my main website is askingforwhatyouwant.com. You can learn about my coaching and how I work with people there. There's some downloadable classes. But the Good Girl Recovery Program is one of my main babies, and that's goodgirlrecovery.com. And there's an ebook there that you can download for free, and then you'll get on the list for when the next one is, if you want to know about that.
Yeah, and the book is really good, and it gives you an opening to it. And I think the more aware we can become of our own internal roadblocks, which these are money things, ideas, and subconscious beliefs we were given from our family. And it's our opportunity now to make a different choice and find something that works for us. And our inner good girl just needs to be heard. So
She just needs to be heard. She's not doing anything wrong. She's just doing the best she can with what she got. And we're going to try to get her some additional tools to make some more grown-up decisions.
Yes. So thank you, Marcia. And everyone, the links for this will be below the video. And until next time, have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Did you particularly like this episode or this type of conversation? You could really help us out by liking, sharing, or subscribing to wherever you are listening or watching this video. And for more information about me or this topic, you can check out moneyactiontips.com.